Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Pei Vov Amud Beis, starting with Daf Pei Vov Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah. Our Mishnah discusses halachos in regards to eating the carbon Pesach. Says the Mishnah, Shtei chaburois shahayu oichlin b'bayis echad. Here we're talking about where there's several people who are included in one what we call classical chabura. That means that they're all included and counted as joining for one carbon Pesach. But here the Mishnah states the Lashon Shtei Chaburos. It means that they can break up into two different groups and they can eat the carbon Pesach b'bayis echad. Eilu hoifchin es pneihem heilach v'oichlin ve'eilu hoifchin es pneihem heilach v'oichlin. The Mishnah says that Tosef is Chiddush that these in this one group can turn their heads in the opposite direction, while the other ones turn their heads in the opposite direction. And though it implies that they're totally separate, nonetheless they can still eat the carbon Pesach together. The Mishnah even says an additional chiddush. If you have a meicham in the middle, in between them, a hot water urn, which seems to divide again the two groups, nonetheless they're able to eat the carbon Pesach as well. Kishashamish oimed limozug limzoig. The Mishnah goes on to say when there's a shamish that is there to serve the people in the groups of the carbon Pesach, so he's involved with one group. So it states koifes es piv umachzir es ponov ashemagia etzel chaburosoi va'oichel. If he is in his one chabura, one group, and he wants to serve the other group, he should close his mouth, and while he's not actually pouring, he should look in the opposite direction towards his own chabura. To make it clear, it should be a chashad that he is now being mitzdarf to this other chabura. Because this Tana, of course, holds you cannot go ahead and eat your Korban Pesach when you begin it in one chabura to eat it in the other chabura. V'hakala, the Mishnah concludes, haufeches es ponel ve'oicheles. A kala, a bride, she can turn her face in the other direction and eat. And it's not a chashad that she's doing so, because the Gemara will explain she is embarrassed and therefore she doesn't want people to look at her while she is eating. The Gemara asks right away, Masnisin mani, this that the Mishnah is mechadish, that you can have a group that are included in the same carbon Pesach, yet they can break out into two different groups and eat the carbon Pesach. Who is the author of this Mishnah? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, Al habatim asher yoichlu oisoi bohem. Here the Brisa states, in plural, the batim, the houses, and again in plural, they will eat. Singular, it's carbon Pesach. Melamed, this teaches, Sheha Pesach ne'echal b'shtei chaburos, that the carbon Pesach, which is singularly mentioned here in the Pasuk, can be eaten plural by more than two groups. I might think that they can also eat in two different places. Talmud loymar bibayis echad ye'ochel. Therefore, the pasuk comes to say that in one bayis, so he can eat. In other words, here Rabbi Yehuda is learning that we're referring to the person himself can eat in one bayis, and therefore he cannot eat in a second bayis. Once he started to eat in one bayis, he can't then go over to another bayis to eat. Mikan omru hashamish she'ochel kezayis b'tzad hatanor. From here they learned that if you had a shamish who was roasting the carbon Pesach on the side of the tanur, and he began eating the carbon Pesach, so since he already began in that place, then he can't go to the other place to eat it. And therefore, if he is somebody who is smart, he should then fill his stomach up with the eating of the carbon Pesach right there, without moving to another place. If his bnei chabura wants to do a favor for him, then they can go and eat their Korban Pesach next to him, because they haven't started yet. This is the other words of Rabbi Yehuda. So again, Rabbi Yehuda is the author of our Mishnah, because our Mishnah states that although they break up into two different groups, that's okay. There's no problem for them to do that. The only thing that they can't do is that they begin eating in one place, they can't go to another place. Rabbi Shimon Oimer, the Brisa continues, Rabbi Shimon is choylek on Rabbi Yehuda. He learns the pasuk differently. Al habati masha yoichlu oisei bohem. He learns melamed sheha oichel mishdei mekoimois. He learns that the pasuk is saying that they will eat, each and every one individual can eat in several plural batim. So that means to say that each one can eat in different places. On top of Bey Vav Amud Beis, Yachal, the Brisa goes on to say in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Yehenecha b'shtei chaburos. I might think that you can be eaten, the Korban Pesach, in two different chaburos, two different factions, two different groups. Talmud loimer bebayis echad ye'ochel. That the Korban Pesach can be eaten only in one bias. Ask the Gemara, Hare, they're learning this, they're reading the same Psachim, and they're darshaning it differently. What's the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon? Again, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the individual cannot eat in a separate house. Once he begins in one place, he can't go and eat in a second place. And Rabbi Shimon is choylek. What is the machlokes? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda sovar yesh aim lemisaris. He learns that you read the pasuk the way it is written, and since it's written as it written bebayis echad yoichal, that's the way it's written. Yud Aleph Chof Lamid, the individual can eat only in one place, in one bias. Whereas Rabbi Shimon Sovar yesh aim lemikra, you go after the way it is read, and therefore, since it's read bebayis echad ye'ochel, is referring to the Korban Pesach, that only in one bias can the Korban Pesach be eaten, but the individual can go ahead and eat it in more than one place. The Gemara now points out the nafkamina between these two opinions, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. If they were sitting in one big room, all of those were counted in the Korban Pesach, and then a mechitza was laid in the middle of the room, dividing the room. So the divrei ha'omer Pesach nechal b'shtei chaburos oichlin. According to the opinion, namely Rabbi Yehuda, that says that one can eat in two different chaburos, two different groups, so then they can eat. L'divrei ha'omer ein ha'pesach nechal b'shtei chaburos. But according to Rabbi Shimon, who says you cannot eat in two different chaburos, so then you cannot, because now it becomes two different chaburos once the mechita was set. In a separate case, here there was a mechita in the middle, and they then had the mechita being removed. So the opposite scenario. Here we say the one who says, Rabbi Shimon, that one who eats the Korban Pesach can eat in two different places, then oichlin. Over here you can eat, because over here we're saying since the mechita was removed, there's a greater space that wasn't seen before, whereby each of the chaburos is now truly eating what seems to be in two mekoimos. So Rabbi Shimon said you can eat in a separate melkom, and therefore oichel. The divra oimer ein oichel. But the one who says that one who cannot eat in two different mekoimos, namely Rabbi Yehuda, then he cannot eat because it's two different mekoimos. Gemara says, Yosiv Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana was sitting, and he said over this halacha that we just stated now, in the scenario where they were sitting in one room and a mechitza was set, whereby Rabbi Yehuda would say you could go ahead and eat, since like two chaburos, and Rabbi Shimon is choylek. And he also brought the other scenario when the mechitza was removed, and there it's the opposite. Rabbi Shimon says they can eat because you can eat in two different mekaymos, whereas Rabbi Yehuda is choylek and says you cannot eat. So Rav Kahana said this with a certainty. Omar le Rav Ashi, Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi then says to Rav Kahana, why are you so certain about these halachos? And that this is the nafka between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. V'tiboy loch iboy. You should ask the following safek question. Si look mechitza ve'asiyas mechitza. In these two scenarios of removing the mechitza or adding the mechitza, mihave kibeis mekaymos. Do we say when you're mesalik the mechitza that it's really true mekaymos? That's two different places? Just the mere fact that you removed the mechitza, maybe the fact that there's more avi or there's more space, part that a person has not seen before, does not necessarily make it into two different mekaymos. They remain placed in the same place where they sat in initially. Ukbeis chaburois. And in regards to then making a mechitza, who's to say that now makes into dudim chaburos? Because now a mechitza is placed in the middle of the room. Maybe it still remains one chaburo. Again, they haven't moved from anywhere. Dami or loy, teku, and therefore it leaves it as an unanswered question according to Rav Ashi. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah, the very end of the Mishnah, that states the Kala, she's able to turn her face and eat, and it's not a chashad that she's eating outside of her chabura. My taimo, what's the reason? Ask the Gemara, Amar B'chia bar Abe, Amar B'yochanan, Mishum shehi boisha. Because the Kala is embarrassed as people are looking at her that she should be eating in front of them, therefore she turns her face, and that's considered to be something that's acceptable. We're not choshid her for trying to eat outside of the chabura. Rav Huna Breid Rav Nosin Ikloi Lebe Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. The Gemara tells over that Rav Huna, the son of Rav Nosin, he went to visit Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Amru Le Mashmecha. They asked him, what is your name? Amr Lahu Rav Huna. He answered, my name is Rav Huna. Amru, they said, Neisiv Mar Apurya. They said to Rav Huna that he should sit down on the couch. Yosef, he sat down. Yohiv Le Kasa. They brought him a kos of wine, of a revis. Kibla Bechad Zimna. He accepted it right away without having to be urged to take it. Veshasya Betrei Zimna. And he drank it in 2 gulps. And when he drank, he did not turn his face. That was the hanhaga of Rav Huna. They asked him, Amar Lei, my time Makaris Lech Lach Rav Huna. Why are you called Rav Huna? You just said your name is Rav Huna instead of Huna. You preceded with Rav. Amar Lu, he said to them, Baal Hashem Ani. I was always called by this name. So you asked me what my name is? So I said my name is Rav Huna. My time Ki Amru Loch Neisiv Apurya Yasbis. Why is it when they said to you, you shall sit on the couch, immediately you sat on the couch? You didn't hesitate. You didn't require any urging. Omar Lu, he said to them, because there's a kalal in Maseches Derech Eretz. Kol ma'aseh yoimar loch balabayis aseh. Whatever the balabayis says that you should do, then you shall do. My taimo kiyavich loch kasa kibalt bechad zimna. Why is it when they gave you a kos of yayin, of a revis, did you take it right away without requiring them to urge you to take it? Omar Lu, he said to Mesarvin lekotim and Mesarvin legodol. There's another rule of derech eretz that you refuse a cotton, but somebody who is a godol, you're not to refuse. My time ashtise betrei zimne. Why did when you drank it in 2 gulps? You drank it once, you took a hefsek, small hefsek, and you drank it a second time. Omar Luhu, he said to them, the Tanya, it states in the Brayso, Hashoise koisoi bebas achas hareze gargeron. One who drinks all at once, the entire revis, in one gulp, he's considered to be somebody who's a gargeron. Shnayim derech eretz. One does with 2 gulps, it's considered to be derech eretz. Shloisha migase haruach. When he drinks it 3, it's with gaiva, it's gases haruach. So my time lo yahadras apoch. The final question they asked him is, so why when you drank did you not turn your face? He said, because Amar Lahu, Kala hoifechet panatnan. Our Mishnah states that the Kala turns her face when eating or when drinking. Therefore, it's the right type of hanhaga for a Kala, but it's not appropriate for somebody else. The Gemara tells over Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosi Ikloy the Bay, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosi ben Lekunya. He went to visit him. Yahavulei koso. They brought him a kois of yayin, of a revis. Kiblei bechad zimno v'shasye bechad zimno. He accepted it right away, without any hesitation, not having to be urged to take it, and he drank it with one gulp. Amrei lei, they said to him, Lo sova lamar, hashoyse koise bas achas hareze gargarin. Did they do not hold that one who drinks all at once with one gulp is considered to be a gargarin? Omar luhu, he responded back to them, no. Loy amrei bekoisoch koton. They didn't say when it comes to a small kois, that's less than a revis, v'yenach mosuk, and sweet wine, v'kreise rechava, and one who has an enlarged abdomen. And therefore, since this is the case over here, that's why I drank it all at once. The Gemara now concludes the parak, the way Rashi learns that we're not discussing the Karm Pesach at all, but rather Hilchos Seuda. Omer Rav Huna. Rav Huna said, B'nei Chabura. When there's a B'nei Chabura, there are many people who want to come to eat a Seuda together. Nichnosim b'shloisha. 3 may enter, and when they hire the Shamish to Mishamish them, so even if the entire Chabura are not together, 3 that do enter, that's already enough, even though it's going to matriach the shamish, because he's going to have to serve these 3 and then serve again those who enter afterwards. And they don't have to wait for each other to finish. They can go ahead and leave, even though it leaves only 1 or 2 individuals for the shamish to be inconvenienced to then serve them. Omar Rabbi says a qualification on this din. That's providing that he entered at the time that it's the meal time, and also that's providing that he leaves while it's still meal time, that there's leaving 1 or 2 individuals there at the table at the Suda while it's still meal time. And further he qualifies the rogash behu dayola. That's also providing that they made it known to the waiter, to the shamish, in advance. Omar Ravina gives further qualifications, and that are not accepted, however. Omar Ravina, v'noislin schar damim, those who are remaining, the last 2, they have to give more of a portion of money to the waiter. And the last one that remains, he has to add an additional tip. The Gemara concludes with less hilchas kavose. The halach is not like Ravina. Hadran aloch ketzad tzoilin.